Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about cars, AM radio, and the ongoing pertinence of our medium. Here to introduce our next presenter is the VP of Southeast Operations for iHeartMedia's Total Traffic and Weather Network. Please give a warm welcome to Alex Fife.
Guys, like Kevin said, I'm Alex Fife, Regional Vice President of Total Traffic and Weather Network. We're a division of iHeart and Premier. AM radio is near and dear to what we do. It's mission critical on a day-to-day basis. Whether we're talking about wildfires out west or the hurricanes in the southeast and eastern seaboard, AM radio is a vital aspect of what we do, and I know there's a lot of talk in this country and in Europe about removing it. Just personally, I think just as a redundancy, that AM radio should be able to hang around for a little while longer, in another 20, 25 years, hopefully. It's important to what we do. It's vital. And I'm up here to introduce a man that's going to talk more about it. If there's anyone in this business who can make the case for AM radio in cars, and specifically as a viable medium, it's Bill Brady. He's the owner and hands-on operator of KFNX, the Pulse of Arizona in Phoenix. Bill is a dedicated radio broadcaster who still believes in the viability of AM radio. As a program director, he was one of the first program directors in the nation to put Rush Limbaugh on the air. In 1981, he was awarded the American Hockey League's James Ellery Award, given annually to the outstanding radio media member in AHL cities. He's got a 45 career in this business. He's been around, it's included management positions with the Miami Herald, my current hometown paper, Comcast, NBC Universal, and iHeartMedia. He acquired KFNX several years ago to underscore his deep belief in the continued viability in AM radio and the news talk format. Ladies and gentlemen, Bill Brady.
Michael Harrison asked me to speak about the state of AM radio, and it's not a hard thing for me to do. There's some important information that I have to communicate to everybody today. There's a deluge of things that we hear about in media and themes and memes that take root. Often they are wrong. And the obituary for AM radio is wrong. The headline of today's remarks is that there is, I'm also old, as the history that was presented should have documented for you. Now I'm better. There is, and this is the key headline, in spite of everything you hear from people who refer to it as ancient modulation instead of AM. There is nothing wrong with AM radio. It is a perfectly good way of distributing content today and tomorrow. There is nothing wrong with WABC, which is making a comeback right now under John Katzimatidis. Congratulations, John. Some nice movement. There is nothing wrong with WCBS in New York, KFI in Los Angeles, WSCR, The Score in Chicago, and WGN, a very venerable station in Chicago. There are many positive points that can be made about AM radio. But today, the more important issue is the existential crisis brought on by electric vehicle manufacturers. This morning, I give thanks to Curtis Leggett, President and CEO of the National Association of Broadcasters and the work of the state associations, including Chris Klein of the Arizona Broadcasters Association, now the Arizona Media Association. Their lobbying and congressional action have put us in a position where the AM for Every Vehicle Act is close to passing, making broadcast AM capability a requirement in new cars sold in the U.S. Thanks also to Ed Markey, Senator from Massachusetts, Ted Cruz of Texas, and Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey, who all have been in both the Senate and Congress and on both sides of the aisle supporters of the act. But I also have to tell you, the battle is not over yet. The act is predicated on AM's role in emergency services, but the issue is much broader and deeper than that. That is what the presentation is about today, and it affects everybody in the talk radio business. Some headlines. The removal of AM radio from vehicles will mean the destruction of AM radio as a business with enormous consequences for a wide range of stakeholders. 60% of radio listenings takes place in vehicles. The loss of that sizable segment of listening will destroy AM radio revenues and bankrupt the industry. Have vehicle manufacturers considered the devastating effects of the decision to remove AM radio from cars? Do vehicle manufacturers really want to be responsible for the wide-ranging consequences of this decision? Headline number 2, there is no legitimate reason why AM radio should be removed from cars and trucks in the United States market. It is still a very popular platform and is utilized by 83 million people each month, according to the Nielsen Audio Rating Service. In addition, many of the highest billing and highest rated radio stations in America are on the AM dial. A service utilized by 83 million people is demonstrably popular with American consumers and should not be threatened. Headline 3, there is a strong argument that the removal of AM radio from vehicles by manufacturers will violate an implied contract between radio broadcasters and the automobile industry. Radios have been in cars since 1920, when introduced by Chevrolet. The relationship between the automobile industry and radio broadcasters meets the definition of an implied contract. An implied contract is a legally binding obligation that derives from actions, conduct, or circumstances of one or more parties in an agreement. It has the same legal force as an express contract, which is a contract that is voluntarily entered into and agreed on verbally or in writing by two or more parties. The implied contract, on the other hand, is assumed to exist, but no written or verbal confirmation is necessary. In short, vehicle owners, the radio industry, and a multitude of interested parties have come to expect and rely on the presence of AM radio as a component of vehicles in the United States market. There are innumerable business relationships that have been entered into based on AM availability in vehicles. For example, the purchase and sale of AM radio stations in the secondary market is based on the expected availability of AM radio as a service in vehicles. This extends to the valuations of these properties, the financing of said transactions, and loans provided by financial institutions and guaranteed by the Small Business Association, among others. There are numerous other contractual and financial relationships dependent on the availability of AM radio in vehicles. Next headline, removal of AM radio from vehicles is altogether different than eliminating a CD or cassette player. A CD or cassette player is an inanimate object. AM radio is a living, breathing ecosystem with employees, advertisers, and vendors. AM radio operating funds pay taxes, music rights fees, land and studio office leases, loan repayment, utilities, insurance, and much more. Next headline, there is a significant number of entities that are major players in AM radio. Independent and group radio station owners of all type, the National Association of Black-Owned Broadcasters, Hispanic broadcasters, religious broadcasters, ethnic broadcasters, farm and agricultural broadcasters, public and non-commercial broadcasters, as well as major radio companies and publicly traded companies such as iHeartMedia, Odyssey, Cumulus Media, and others. Next headline, the removal of AM radio from vehicles will adversely affect many constituencies not served by FM radio and other media. Religious broadcasters, black broadcasters, farm broadcasters, and ethnic broadcasters all serve segments of the American people from platforms on the AM band. The availability of Christian teaching program through religious stations is an important service to its audience. Specialty music formats such as gospel music are very popular from perches on the AM band. For example, WSOK-AM in Savannah, Georgia, was ranked 5th in the fall 2022 Nielsen audio ratings with a 5.8 audience share. It beat the CHR, classic rock, country, and urban AC formats on full market FM signals in Savannah. WSOC, by the way, is a 1 kilowatt AM radio station. KFWB in Los Angeles is 98 years old. In the past, it was a highly respected all-news station. KFWB has a massive signal over Southern California and serves Angelenos with a regional Mexican music format. All of these voices would be threatened with the removal of AM radio from vehicles where a sizable portion of total listening takes place. Are listeners to these stations not deserving of being able to receive these services in their vehicles? Sports programming and professional and college sports will be significantly harmed if AM radio is removed from vehicles. While there are some FM radio stations doing the sports talk format and broadcasting sports play-by-play, most sports programming is still on the AM band. Radio networks for professional and college sports are largely comprised of local AM radio stations and will be decimated by the loss of AM radio in vehicles. A review of the station rosters of Major League Baseball team networks will show most local stations in small towns across America are on the AM band. Network radio and syndication services will be devastated by the removal of AM radio from cars. The vast majority of news network radio affiliates are AM stations. While there is a smattering of FM news talk stations, the bulk of radio news network affiliates are AM radio stations. Given the formats and programming of FM radio, such programming would not be able to migrate en masse to the FM band. The CBS Radio News Network, ABC News, Fox News Radio, the Associated Press Radio Network, Town Hall News Network, and NBC News Radio Network all provide hourly newscasts to listeners who want to stay informed throughout the broadcast day. In addition, the Westwood One Radio Network, Premier Radio Networks, Compass Radio Network, USA Radio Network, Genesis Communications Radio Network, American Urban Radio Network, ESPN Radio, CBS Sports Radio, NBC Sports Radio Network, ESPN, and ESPN Deportes all serve millions of listeners from networks made up largely of AM radio stations. Vital local programming is at risk if AM radio is removed from cars. During the 2022 election campaign, news talk radio station KFNX-AM in Phoenix, Arizona, interviewed 60 candidates for federal, state, and local offices. Chris Mays, victorious candidate for Arizona Attorney General, won by 250 votes. Mays had appeared on KFNX 5 times during the campaign and said, "I like the opportunity to appear on KFNX to speak to a conservative audience." It should be noted that Mays is a Democrat. What is the rationale for the removal of AM radio from vehicles? Is it a coolness factor? Is it digital supremacy? If you live in the high-tech world, you may see AM radio as old or outdated, but you are not seeing the world as it is. Yes, the internet and technology have brought much to our world, but many people still read newspapers, watch network television, and listen to AM radio. Why? Because that's how they like to consume media. Are large segments of the listening public undeserving of AM service because digital supremacists think it isn't cool? No, for various reasons, many people don't subscribe to satellite radio or use streaming services, and believe it or not, some aren't even online or only online to a limited degree. Is electrical interference from EVs a valid reason to remove AM radio from vehicles? Obviously not, since a number of automakers have been able to develop AM radios that are successfully shielded from EV interference. Come on, you guys are the technical wizards. You should be able to provide an AM radio that is not susceptible to electrical interference from EVs. While you're at it, you could also make an AM radio with better sound and fidelity for the enjoyment of vehicle owners. Is the removal from AM radio from vehicles a backdoor to silence conservative talk radio? Yes. While there are a few commercial FM news talk radio stations, they represent a minority of the stations carrying the news talk format. If AM radio is effectively silenced with its removal from cars and trucks, the economic viability of the news talk format would be jeopardized, and not all or even many of these stations would be able to migrate to the FM dial. Some automakers say streaming is a viable option, but is it? With internet service disruptions, streaming is not yet consistently reliable. There has been a steady stream of internet service outages. On June 13th, 2023, Amazon Web Services experienced an incident that affected a number of services in the U.S. East 1 region for several hours. Many services have fundamental architectural dependencies on one another. An outage by one service will affect many other partners in the digital ecosystem, including radio station streams. Amazon has had multiple incidents, and has been just one of many. Virgin Media, Microsoft Outlook, Microsoft, Rogers Communications, British Airways, WhatsApp, Twitter, and Google have all suffered significant outages in recent years. The reality of media consumption is that people do it in many different ways. Some may live off their iPhone music collection or a streaming service such as Spotify. They may watch Prime or Netflix, but many more use AM, FM, satellite radio, broadcast TV, or cable TV, and still read newspapers or magazines. Not everybody consumes the same services or the same platforms. The automotive industry should not deny them the right and opportunity to use any or all of the popular services available to them in the marketplace. AM signals reliably deliver audio service at no charge to local consumers traveling around their hometowns. AM stations perform bountiful local service. In fact, the Ford Motor Company reached out to KFNX recently to promote a scholarship fund to recruit auto technicians. Do Ford and other automakers know what people listen to on AM? It's a lot different than the digital supremacists perceive. AM listeners consume 24/7 world, national, and local news, traffic and weather, local sports, talk shows, public affairs, and public service information, and a wide variety of specialty music programming. In the minds of digital supremacists and hipsters, they may think of it as less cool, but millions of Americans rely on AM radio. Vendors and suppliers to AM radio stations are also part of the AM radio ecosystem. Technical equipment manufacturers who make transmitters, audio processing equipment, and other component parts and accessories. Software producers, companies that supply radio station automation equipment. There are a lot of players who would be affected by the disruption of AM radio. Finally, do not fool yourself. FM is next. Automakers are attempting to monetize the dashboard with subscription services and new revenue streams. Do not expect the automakers to accept the AM radio in every vehicle act and to just quietly accept it. There will be lawsuits and court challenges, maybe even reaching the Supreme Court. Then there is the issue of enforcement and how much muscle the government agencies will put behind that. This battle is not over even if the AM radio in every car act passes. This is merely the first skirmish. Now the job is to lobby automakers on a much broader front and to make them aware of all of the issues involved and all that AM radio does for our country. This report in text form will be available following the convention. Thank you for your time and attention today. This is it's been a term that's been used a lot recently, existential threat for radio and AM radio. This is one. Thank you.